Every day, more than 5,000 thefts are reported in the UK, and most never get recovered. Here in Gwent, a new initiative is aiming to reverse that trend.
We've got an analyst. They're constantly, every day, looking at what offences have happened in the last 24 hours. Are there patterns and trends? They map them, plot them. Are there certain items of property that are being targeted? Is there a certain location that's being targeted? Then that enables us to adopt our covert techniques and some of our other techniques to actually place our property in there.
The most stolen items are identified, and trackable cars, bikes and phones are deliberately left by police as bait to try and catch thieves in the act. The live data is then analysed in this high-tech HQ. But it's not just Gwent residents who are benefiting.
We identified that we were having a series of bikes taken from a National Trust holiday park. This was targeting holidaymakers who were coming into our force area to holiday, relax, but what they were finding was they were becoming the victims of crime.
To combat this spate of thefts, the police placed what's known as capture bikes marked with smart water in the National Trust holiday park the thieves were targeting.
So in this case, it was overnight. They were a certain make and model of bike, and also they were going from actually being attached to the back of vehicles such as motorhomes, camper vans, rather than being left by the side or attached to buildings. So we deployed 2 of our capture bikes overnight on the back of a camper van to give us the best opportunity to identify this offender.
With the capture bike in position, the police monitored the CCTV in the park. It was now just a question of waiting for the thief to take the bait.
The footage shows his direction of travel after taking the bikes. You can also see that he's carrying bolt croppers, which he subsequently uses to take the locks off the bikes.
The police had crucial evidence of the crime taking place, but they wanted more. They wanted to break up the crime ring behind this wave of thefts.
We traced them back to an address and we identified 2 things. So the first was there were a number of items that we believed were potentially stolen. And secondly, that outside that address was CCTV.
And it was this new CCTV footage that led to a whole new development in the case. And the best bit.
This was the offender's own CCTV.
The man buying the stolen bikes was recording his own every move.
You see the offender, the person who's stolen the bikes, walk towards the building. He then meets the handler and shows him the 2 bikes. The handler then takes the 2 bikes from him, and what we then see on further footage is that handler taking the bikes up the stairs to his flat and taking them into his flat.
It's the perfect scenario. Evidence of the bike being stolen from the location, being taken in by the handler, and smart water prints all over both. The police had more than enough grounds to investigate further.
So when the team went in, they identified a number of other items. We were also having a spate of offences of thefts from gardens, so garden furniture, statues, and so on. And we compared the descriptions of the items located to those provided by the victims of crime.
And by cross-referencing those items with the handler's own CCTV footage, they could add further crimes to his charge sheet, including this statue that an elderly lady had reported stolen a few months earlier.
It's something that had stood in their garden for about 30 years. It had real sentimental value, and it was something that she just reported to us to record, really. She never expected to get it back. So when we phoned her to tell her we'd recovered it, we were bringing it back to her, she actually got a little bit upset, a bit overwhelmed, and was just extremely happy to have it back.
But handling stolen goods wasn't the only crime being committed here. Police couldn't believe what else they found in the flat.
What this shows was this all started from a theft of a bike, what's seen as sometimes quite a low-level offence with quite low risk. But what we identified from that was two different offenders who were working together for offences such as handling, theft, possession of drugs, and linked them to a number of offences that they'd been committing across communities in the local area.
This was no simple bike operation, but a web of criminality. And once again, the invisible traceable liquid known as smart water was instrumental in the conviction.
So smart water at the moment has a 100% conviction rate in court, so the use of the technology has always been successful. It's fantastic for us, enabled us to be able to tell the story of that offending and of that handling, and it just provides that extra layer of evidence, which means that we can secure the conviction, and often 1 or 2, 3 key pieces of evidence can be the difference between someone being convicted and going to prison, protecting the community, or not, and being found not guilty.
No one of our methods can stand alone. They've got to work together and have that wraparound work to make them so effective.
The thief was sent to prison for 12 months, and the handler now has a criminal record. And Inspector Lawton has a message for any other would-be bike thieves in Gwent.
At the moment, we have a number of active operations with our capture assets. They're deployed across the force on a daily basis. We currently have a capture bike deployed in an area within the city centre, because that is where we've had reports of criminality of that type.
So the message is clear. If you're thinking of stealing something, be warned. You never know who could be watching you. In Wales, smart technology is being rolled out by one police force to tackle low-level crime. Gwent police are using smart water, a unique forensic marking system on the items most often targeted by thieves. When it was used on special trap cars fitted with cameras, the number of prosecutions went up.
So over the last few years in Gwent, we've invested a significant amount of time, resource and money, and we're really starting to reap the rewards of that. We're preventing people from being victims, which means that we're available to be more proactive and support our communities.
Now it's being used to tackle bike theft in Newport, where thieves have been targeting cyclists coming into the city.
Offenders would sometimes break locks. They would use lock snappers and other tools to cut bikes away from bike racks, and this was taking place in daylight hours in the city centre.
The thieves were wreaking havoc in a city trying its best to encourage healthy and environmentally friendly transport.
People who were visiting the city centre to do their shopping, people who were working there, going to the gym and utilising facilities in the city centre, were often coming back to bike racks and finding that their bike had been stolen.
It's really important that we understand the impact of what some people might think are lower level crime, so for example having your bike stolen. But actually if you use that to get to work, to go and see family and friends, to help look after people, it's hugely impactful.
We used traditional methods to start with, increasing patrols in the area by looking at CCTV opportunities and offering people crime prevention advice through local signs, through social media and other means. Unfortunately, the crime persisted and we still had a problem with bike thefts taking place at that same location.
The force was already having success tackling car theft by leaving trap cars for thieves to steal from car parks. Police knew that a small number of prolific offenders were responsible for most of the bike theft in the city, so putting them out of action became a priority. Could the introduction of capture bikes be the answer?
This was an opportunity for our department to utilise the capture bikes that we use, and what this involves is placing a police-owned bike at the location that we'd identified during the times of which similar offences had taken place, with a view to catching the thief in the act of stealing the bike.
Not only would the bike be monitored, it would also be marked with the smart water they'd been using on wider thefts across Gwent.
So once we had identified when we were going to place the bike at the location where the thefts had taken place, we put one of our capture bikes in situ, and we ensured that it was being covered by CCTV at the time.
With all eyes on the CCTV, all they had to do now was wait.
And after a short space of time, a male turned up and stole the bike So the CCTV footage shows a busy shopping area with lots of people in the area during daylight hours in the middle of a busy weekday. The footage shows the male walking up to a bike rack, selecting the bike which just so happened to be ours on this occasion, and taking it away from that location before removing it towards his home address, which was outside the city centre. So I think this was an experienced thief. He was very casual in his actions. He didn't want to draw attention to what he had just done, which made him blend into the background by acting completely normally and riding the bike away over the bridge away from the city centre without drawing attention to what he had done or the fact that the bike he was riding on was stolen. Officers were able to identify who he was, located the bike that belonged to Gwent Police, and he was arrested and taken to custody.
Across the UK, bike theft is on the rise. With some costing the same as a small car, they can be a lucrative source of fast cash for thieves who know what they're looking for. Last year alone, almost 80,000 bikes were stolen. That's an average of 1 every 6 minutes. Here in Gwent, being able to target bike thieves with smart water is paying off.
So once the male had been arrested, he was taken to custody where he went through the process of being scanned for smart water. That involves going through a room that's kitted with ultraviolet lights, and we can look at his clothing, his hands, to see if any of the smart water product is transferred to him, and if it is, we can capture evidential samples which can be analysed, and then he and that sample can be traced back to the incident of theft that's taken place.
In this case, the police not only had one prosecution on their hands, they could also link the man to a number of other bike thefts.
This was likely to be the thief who was responsible for other thefts in the area at the times we had identified. When his house was searched following his arrest, we identified a number of other bikes that were suspected of being stolen, and we also identified paperwork that showed that he had sold on previous bikes to both second-hand retailers and scrap metal dealers in the area.
For Gwent Police, new technology is reaping big rewards in the fight against crime.
We've gone from marking a few hundred homes, having a small number of petrol stations signed up, and shops working with us on the scheme, to now thousands, tens of thousands of homes are now protected with smart water, property marking. The plan is for it to continue to grow. More forces are interested in adopting the broader approach to how we really target these offences. So it's been fantastic.